Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. Do you have a nickname, by the way?
If you go way, way back in my high school days, I had a nickname, and the name was Cordo. When I was a freshman in high school, I was 6'2" and about 130. And I was not very coordinated. And so my nickname became Coordination, and then they cut it short to Cordo. So if you talk to anybody I grew up with, that's what they called me. Everybody.
This is a great nickname.
Everybody did. Yeah.
Guess what?
Cordo.
That might stick.
It's going out. Yeah.
Cordo. What are you now? Are you still 6'2"?
6'3".
6'3",
Yeah.
and not quite 130
Just slightly over.
anymore.
I've lost my girlish figure.
Just a little bit.
Just slightly.
You look amazing.
Thanks. For 64, not bad.
Wow.
64. The white hair shows.
I wouldn't have said more than 63.
Thank you.
You bet. Absolutely. Well, Jan has spent a life, 38 plus years in the software industry.
In Utah here.
In Utah. That's a long time.
Long time. I've seen a lot of stuff.
That was, how near to the beginning of the software industry is that in Utah?
Well, there were two main software companies in Utah when I started. WordPerfect
Yeah.
and Novell. That was it in Utah.
Yeah.
There may have been a couple of small companies, but primarily those were the companies, and they grew to be pretty big at the time, considering. But you had Microsoft and you had Oracle, and there's a lot of companies that don't exist now. There was a company called Lotus 123 that owned the spreadsheet market.
Yeah.
Owned it.
I remember.
WordPerfect owned the word processing market. Novell owned the networking market.
Mm-hmm.
We actually tried to merge those three companies together. Not many people know that story, but Ray Norda, who was the founder of Novell, just thought, hey, if we're going to compete with Microsoft, we've got to have a word processor. We've got to have a spreadsheet, because they were coming with Word and Excel, and they own the operating system on the desktop, which was their juggernaut. So Windows, and there's a whole story about how that came to be. But they had a juggernaut in the space, and they controlled everything. And so Ray was like, if we're gonna fight these guys, you got to have something in the face of the consumer, which WordPerfect and Lotus had. And actually, there was another company called Borland that had a database. And so you had those four companies were going to merge and make this kind of super company. Yeah. And it got right to the end, and it fell apart.
Wow. Why did it fall apart? What?
I think the WordPerfect guys got a little cold feet on that. Jim Manzi, who was the CEO of Lotus at the time, he still wanted to get some stuff done. But you get that many companies involved trying to figure out what a new company is going to look like, and it just didn't come together. But eventually, Novell ends up buying WordPerfect, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
In 92, I think.
The WordPerfect story is fascinating.
Yeah.
My wife's an attorney, and for a long time, the legal world stuck with WordPerfect and still to this day prefer WordPerfect.
Yeah.
I hear this argument all the time about how WordPerfect was so much more manageable.
They own that space. They own the legal space, just hands down.
So I think that's an interesting question. How could a company that owned the space and still is highly regarded in the space get beaten out? What was the issue?
Microsoft played this perfectly. So there was an operating system at the very beginning called DOS, right? The disk operating system. It was the basic fundamental operating system of all the computers. But it didn't have a graphical user interface. It was just command line stuff. And people got really good at running command lines, but when you ran an application, you wanted to have a graphical interface. So people started finding ways to have a graphical interface on top of DOS. Well, what happened was IBM came out with an operating system called OS2. Now, I'm saying stuff you guys probably have never even heard of.
Oddly enough.
Have you heard of OS2?
I've heard of all of this, yes.
So IBM came out with this operating system called OS2, and that was going to become the new PC operating system. It had a graphical interface, et cetera. And they had partnered with Microsoft because they had partnered with them on DOS, put DOS on all their computers. So they were in a partnership there. Well, in the meanwhile, Microsoft's building this thing called Windows in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, there was a point in time where they just came out and they said, we are not going with OS2. We're going Windows. And they totally just dissed IBM. IBM is the juggernaut in the industry in computers.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wanted to partner with it because they were so huge. International Business Machines, what it stands for. And they were everywhere. And they owned all the back-end processing with mainframes, et cetera. They were just massive. And they had these huge service organizations, and they just owned the computing world. Well, Microsoft's this little upstart thing, and they end up partnering with them on DOS, and then they just totally flipped the table on them. Well, guess where everybody was writing their applications to? OS2. And so when Microsoft flipped the switch, they not only had Windows, but they had all of their applications written to Windows.
Wow.
And so when they walked away from OS2, they had Microsoft Windows and all their applications ready to go. And everybody else had to scramble to come up with a Microsoft Windows application, including WordPerfect. And they never recovered from it.
Wow. Amazing. This is just a taste of what you're going to get on this podcast today, the knowledge.
Hopefully it gets
I already feel like I'm a better person.
Whatever.
I always feel like that when I'm around,
when you start at
when
zero,
I'm hanging
Frank,
around.
there's nowhere but up. Nowhere but up.
That's absolutely true. The first time I met you, I tried to call you Yen.
Yen or Jan?
I tried to call you Yen, and then you said, well, it would really be Jan.
Yeah.
But my name's Jan.
Yeah.
So is there a history there? Would the correct pronunciation be Jan?
Yeah, my grandfather's from Denmark.
Okay.
So I asked my parents one time, I said, so where'd you come up with this Jan thing? And they go, we don't know. I'm like, you gave your child a name.
Thanks
you have
a lot.
no idea where it came from. But it's kind of a Scandinavian name, right?
Sure.
So whenever I'm in Europe, everybody calls me Jan. But it's been a little bit of a challenge. It's kind of like the boy named Sue kind of a deal. Because it's more of a female name, right?
Yeah.
And so I got a letter one time that I was being inducted into the Women's Technology Hall of Fame in Utah. That was awesome.
Love it. Did you get inducted?
I didn't make the grade. But I've had that. The worst one was on my Delta frequent flyer card.
Uh-huh.
They took my first name, my middle initial, which is Eric, and I was Jane Newman for 25 years.
With Delta?
With Delta. Every time I check in, they'd look at me like, can we see your ID, sir?
Cordo,
Jane.
Man, we're getting
But the worst one
stuff.
ever was I went to a golf tournament. It was kind of one of these, what do you call it? Where you go in there, it's a charity event. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go to this charity event. I show up, I'd paid my money. I showed up and I said, hey, Jan Newman. I went to the desk, where you're checking. Jan Newman. The guy looks at me, he goes, you're Jan Newman? I go, yes. And he goes, oh no. I go, did you put me with 3 women? He goes, I did. I go, well, then I'm playing from the women's team.
Absolutely.
100%.
Boom.
It was basically the worst golf day of my life. These 3 women kind of went together. I went by myself.
You were all alone.
Yeah, I was all alone.
Well, to be fair, over the last couple of days, I've done a lot of research on you. And when I Googled Jan Newman, there were several prominent females.
Of course.
Named Jan Newman. Jan Newman.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it just goes with the territory.
I called a helpline one time for some company I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
And the person goes, your name is Jan Newman. And it was a female. She goes, my name's Jan Newman too. I'm like going, are you kidding me? So we chatted, not about what I'd called about. We just chatted about our names for a while. It was really funny.
That's a lot of fun.
First time I've ever met someone with the same name as a female.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Yeah.
I've never had that experience. I won't. Yeah, but okay. Will you do this for us?
Sure.
Will you just? I want to dig into your background a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I want people to know about your business life. Can you just give us a 30,000 foot view of what it looks like when you got into the working world, and then the companies that you helped build that got acquired to the point where you are today with Sage Creek Partners?
Sure. So I went to school at BYU, and I was teaching French there to kind of help pay for my school, but I was also studying computer science. And there's this company called Novell, right, which was growing like crazy in Utah County. And I applied for a job as a software test engineer, which is kind of the lowest rung on the ladder if you talk about software engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in there and got hired and started working there. And the company was growing so fast that everybody's just getting moved up and organizations being built under them. I was the very first software test engineer, but eventually within like 3 years, I was managing like 70 people in this test organization. We were growing so quickly. And so I ran the test organization, and then Ray Norda, who was the CEO there, became one of my mentors, probably the most amazing mentor I've ever had. He just said, listen, I need to have you start learning different parts of the business. And he loved to just take people and move them around. He would take you from, I was running software test engineering, and he put me over all the technical support of the business. It was kind of broken at the time. And so he says, I'm going to put you over here and you're going to run this for a while. So I got in there, figured out what was wrong. There were some problems there. We got it fixed. And once you fix something and it starts doing really well, then they go, okay, you're ready for the next thing. So then he puts me over all of engineering, all of software engineering. And then one day, I'll never forget this, we're going, the guy that was running this one business unit, which is the main business unit of Novell, he was leaving the company, just kind of abruptly had to leave the company. And we were flying to San Jose, which we did every Monday morning for our staff meeting down there. The wheels just come off the ground. And he goes, Newman, here's the deal. You are now going to run all this entire business unit. It was called the Network Systems Group. You're going to run the whole thing. So you have engineering, support, marketing, you name it, everything. And I'm 32 years old. And I go, well, Ray, I just don't know if I can do that. And I go, what are my options? He goes, well, I'll fire you if you don't want to take it. And I'm like going, I'll take the job.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good.
What's the pay?
So I don't even think we talk about pay. It was just like, you're going to do this,
You're
right?
do it.
So anyway, I took the job, and I was way over my head there, to be honest with you. It was a very, very challenging.
A stretch.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The other things I did, I felt very comfortable. When I went over to tech support, I'd never done it before. And there I just empowered some really good guys that were kind of being held down, and it just took off. So I kind of became a hero there, and they just figure everything you touch turns to gold, and that's not always the case.
Right.
That was a very, very difficult job for me. And I would say I was mildly successful in that job, where I thought I was uber successful in the other areas. And then I stayed in that job for a few years. And then Ray Norda, he left the company in 94, and I stayed 2 more years. And then he called me one day, and he says, hey, Newman, I'd like to fund a business that you start and run. I go, well, like, I'm working at Novell.
Have you been thinking about starting a business?
No, not at all. Not even. I mean, I didn't know you did that. I thought you worked for people.
I love
companies.
Ray Norda.
Oh, he's crazy. Yeah. So he said, I want to fund a company that you run. I'm like going, like what? And he goes, I don't know. Come up with an idea. Literally just like that. So I'm like going, okay. So I got a couple of guys. We come up with an idea, and I said, Ray, I've got an idea. Here's what we do. He says, put together a little basic business plan. So we did that, and we went to him, and we said, we think we need about $2.5 million. And we shook hands, and 2 days later, we had $2.5 million in our bank account. We didn't even have a contract or anything. And we started a little company called Key Labs, which was a third-party testing company, which is kind of what I'd done. It was my expertise.
Yeah, and so not to cut you off, but reading about your history, that seemed to be where you made your mark.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a comfort level for you in the testing arena? Okay.
Yeah, it was really comfortable. So I jumped into that business, and to be honest, very naive about the business world. I didn't know businesses could fail. I didn't know how hard it was going to be and how much grinding there would be. And I was just grateful we had Ray Norda behind us. But he made it very clear, this is your funding and it will stop right here. So you better get after it.
Wow.
He was one of these guys that would just let you just keep taking money. So so we got going, and I'll never forget the first year. It took us probably 4 months to kind of get it up and going. And our revenue started climbing. And so we started hiring, and it started climbing some more. And we got to November, and we kind of hit our peak, and we're like going, wow, we're killing it. So we really kind of put the pedal down and started hiring some more. And then from that month forward, our revenues declined and declined. And by December, well, actually it was October when we kind of peaked. November, December, we got down to almost nothing. And I'm like going, oh no, what are we going to do? So I go to Ray and I said, Ray, would you be okay if I put some of my own money in so we can cover our expenses? And he goes, I would love to have you have money in this deal. I would love that.
That's great.
And you know what he's thinking, right?
Yeah.
You have skin in the game. You're different.
Yeah.
And then January, we turned the corner and it just took off and we never looked back.
Let me ask you a quick question before you go on. How meaningful was that to you to put money in? Was that like putting you on steroids?
Yeah, it changed everything. Because all of a sudden
investment, your own investment changed everything.
And it literally was not a ton. It was $100,000. But to pull out of your savings account and say, this may go away and you never see it again. That was one of those moments where you just kind of go, we got to go. But it changed how I looked at the business and it changed my motivation. So I always tell people, if you take other people's money, you got to make sure you give them a great return. But if you want to really get some skin, put some money into your deal. And then all of a sudden, everything changes for you.
It accelerates.
Everything. Well, yeah, everything gets really serious all of a sudden. And there's no dinking around. You got to make it work. If you don't make it work, you lose your capital.
Yeah.
And so we worked at that literally that next year and the next year. So 96. So we started at 96 when the internet is really starting to get some momentum. By 98, we had multiple offers for the company. So the first offer comes in, it was $19 million for the business. Literally, we've been in, Ray's put $2.5 million, and that's it. And we're in here 2 years, about a little over 2 years. So we get this offer for $19 million. We're like going, holy cow. And Ray goes, we go take it to Ray, and he goes, that's not enough. And we're like, we're doing our calculator math.
It sounds like enough.
And he looks at you and he goes, look at you guys doing your counting of your money like that. This guy's worth $1 billion, right? What does he care? Chump change to him. So then he says,
I am loving this story.
He says it's not good enough. I go, okay. Literally 2 weeks later, we get an offer for $27 million. And we're like going, Ray, is this good enough? And he goes, nope. And I'm like going, Ray, we've been in this for 2 years. He goes, it's not good enough. 2 weeks later, we get an offer for $40 million.
Are these three different groups?
3 different companies. 3 different companies. And the company we sell to for $40 million, it was a 100% stock deal. Their stock doubled within 6 months before the deal closed. It was an $80 million transaction.
And that was good enough.
That was finally good enough.
What did you learn from Ray saying, Newman,
well,
that's not good enough?
Be patient and look at, and I didn't really, to be honest with you, I didn't know how to value a business at the time. Ray saw something in the business that we probably didn't see just because of his background and experience. So now when I look at a business, I look at it totally differently. And here's the other thing, if you have scared money in a deal, you're going to pull a trigger a lot earlier when you don't have scared money.
What's scared money?
That means, if this thing doesn't go, I'm broke. And you'll see people do, unless they're just these super risk-taking guys and they don't care. Scared money is when you just have fear driving everything you do.
You know, we had Casey Field on the podcast, and I know you know Casey.
Know him well.
But this story is very similar to a point in Casey's life when he was broke. And had 3 young kids at home, coming off of an injury, didn't qualify for the NFR the previous year, was barely paying his bills, and had to figure out a way to get back on top. And his way was to win. He just had to win. I could see in that scenario, and we talked about it, like, how do you manage that fear? That's like scared money. If he went in there with fear, he's not coming out on top. No. He didn't. No. His attitude was, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And he did. And then he won the whole thing and a significant portion of the $1 million prize. And that set him up. So I just think it's fascinating across these different businesses. I'll call rodeoing a business and software, but there's lessons, really things that are analogous between the two and in business and in life about how you manage fear money, investment,
Yeah.
and your livelihood.
And the story gets better.
Even better?
Yeah. This isn't the end of that little company and what it did.
Okay, so this is,
So that was Key Labs.
and you've now sold.
We've sold this business, but before we sold the business, we had some technology in this company that we thought was even more valuable than that company. So we had taken that and started a new business and moved all that technology into that company called Altiris. And we give a license to the Key Labs guys to use the technology because that's where it was part of what they did as a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we moved that over into this new company called Altiris. And I was running that business, and I let one of my other partners run the Key Labs business. So we put that technology in there, and we started growing that business. And it was a pure software business. This other one was kind of a tech-enabled services business because we were testing people's products and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the multiple you get on that's not as high as a pure software play. So we got into this thing, and we went to Ray, and we said, Ray, we think we've got a whole nother business here. Would you be willing to help us fund this business? We think this could be worth a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at it and he goes, I'll do that. So he puts $4.5 million into this new business called Altiris, which was I would just call it a systems management company. So it's software to help manage PCs and laptops and mobile devices and servers. And we expanded our portfolio of software technology in that business. And some really interesting things happened. We just thought, okay, we got this opportunity. We're starting to grow the revenues, but we were only doing, $4 or $5 million at the time. And then something personally happened that kind of changed my course on this one. My wife was diagnosed with a liver disease that would at some point require her to have a liver transplant. This was in 2000, basically.
How old are you now?
I'm 40 years old. And so I'm like going, what am I going to do? And I remember sitting in my office. I told Ray, I said, listen, my wife's got this thing. I don't know what's going to happen. They told us within 5 years, she might need a liver transplant. So I'm thinking about her and her family. And I'm like going, I got to get somebody in here to run this business because I can't, if something goes south here, I'm going to have to spend time with my wife. So I'm sitting in my office one day and I'm just like going, who could run this business? And as clear as a bell, I saw this guy's face and his name came into my mind, Greg Butterfield. And I'd met Greg one time before that. So I literally got on the phone right then. I said, Greg, what are you up to these days? He said, well, we just sold this company. In fact, Ray Norda had invested in the company where he was the VP of sales, a little company called Vinca. And he says, yeah, we just sold the company and I'm transitioning out to my new thing. I said, what are you going to do? He said, well, I'm going with the CEO and I'm going to be the VP of sales at this other company we're going to start. And I go, how would you like to be the CEO of a company? And he goes, what? I go, I got to step aside for a bit and I would love to have you come over on this business. He goes, I'll be right over. And he came over and he goes, listen, I'm transitioning this other company. So I'm leaving for Hawaii tomorrow for 2 weeks. When I get back, we'll talk some more. But I showed him the business. We demoed the software and everything else. And he told me later, he says, I walked out of that office and something just spoke to my heart that I got to do this. And that was a game changer for us because we had a guy that really understood sales. And he brought just a great group of sales guys over. And we had already negotiated a deal with Compaq Computer Corporation, who was the largest PC manufacturer at the time. And that's a story in of itself. It's one of the coolest stories I've ever been involved with. But they basically called me one day and said, hey, we would like to put your software in all of our PCs. And I'm like going, why are they calling us? So I met with them at PC Expo in New York, showed them our stuff, and they go, yeah, we want that.
Wow.
So it got installed on every computer they sold. They own 30% of the market. And so we had basically a license to hunt with all the Compaq guys. So Butterfield brings this team of guys in here, and it just took off. And within 2 years, we were ready to do an IPO. We were doing about $175 million in revenue at the time. And we had got all our bankers and everything. We decided we wanted to do an IPO. Ray Norda thought we were crazy because he'd been in a lot of public companies and it's not fun.
Yeah.
But we just said, Ray, we want to put this on our resume that we did an IPO.
IPO, yeah.
He said, okay. So we got all the bankers and stuff. We were ready to go in the fall of 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And then September 11th happened. We were teed up and ready to go do our IPO in December. And I remember calling Butterfield, and he goes, well, I guess that changes that. Wow. So our plans for our IPO get scrapped. But things kind of start normalizing. We get everything going again. And in May of 2002, first tech IPO, we come out with our offering, and we're a public company. That was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But I can't remember at the time. I think we were like $600 million valuation or something.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. But that one little moment, Frank, I just have to tell you, there was, for me and Greg Butterfield both, there was something that happened.
Okay.
That was pretty special.
Okay. That's why I clued in on that, and I want to talk about that, because if I understand your history correctly, that's not the first time that's happened in your life.
Yeah.
When you've had a moment of clarity.
Yeah.
And we're missing a whole part of your story that I want to get into.
Okay.
So let's go back.
Okay. And
start kind of from the beginning, getting up to this point where you just left us with
Isn't that something in the sound of music?
with your
Let's start
IP.
at the very beginning.
Is it
a very good place to start?
Oh yeah, I think you're
Julie
right.
Andrews. Anyway,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go back to the beginning. After Moses led you through to the promised land. I'm so sorry.
Okay. That's a little far back.
I'm so sorry. I had to do it.
That was pretty good. I get old jokes all the time. Thank you for throwing that in there.
And you ended up in Idaho.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. Okay. So you grew up in Idaho.
Actually, was born in Idaho, was there for probably 4 or 5 years, and then we moved to Southern Nevada. My dad was a school teacher.
Gotcha.
So I actually didn't grow up in Idaho.
Yes. Okay. In Southern Nevada, your dad's a school teacher. Isn't your mom
She worked at a bank.
Okay. And you had thoughts of becoming a teacher as well.
Yeah. My dad's a teacher, had 2 brothers that were teachers.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember in 7th grade writing on a thing where they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I put on truck driver. I had very high expectations.
Well, driving truck.
Yeah, driving truck.
Oh, you gotta learn.
Yeah.
I kind of still fantasize about like there's something appealing to me about driving truck.
I don't know what it would be.
Well, I love to drive.
Yeah.
And I love to see the country.
Well, there you go. There's your retirement
and I
program.
love fast food.
There you go. I heard all the boxes checked. You're ready to go.
It really works out well.
Yeah.
I would, if I did that, I would make sure that my route ran through Pittsburgh, PA constantly. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why.
Very interesting choice.
Because in Pittsburgh, there's a sandwich shop called the Primanti Brothers. The Primanti Brothers sandwich is built for someone on the road.
Got it.
And what the genius of the Primanti sandwich is that they built the sandwich with all of the accessories on the sandwich. So if you wanted a sandwich and French fries and a drink,
it's all built in.
It's all built in.
Wow.
Into one. And so then you just have the sandwich on the road and
I'm
you get
going
everything.
I got to go there.
Yeah, you have
Is
to.
it still around?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go next time.
Yeah, I think it was a Diners.
I've never
Drive-In
been to
Dive.
Pittsburgh, but next time I'm
You
going.
haven't?
Never been.
You've been all over the world.
I've been all over the world.
You've never been to Pittsburgh?
Nope.
Huh.
Crazy.
Well, when you go.
I'm going.
Okay. All right. So you had thoughts of becoming a truck driver and a teacher. Went through school. You have how many siblings in
I've
your
got
family?
3 half brothers and 3 full siblings.
Okay. And kind of what's the age range? Are you all similar?
I'm the youngest.
Oh, you're the baby.
Yeah, I'm the baby.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, my full siblings were like 2 years apart. There's 4 of us, so 2 years apart. And then the others, there's kind of a big gap. And
Gotcha.
they're quite a bit older.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. And you grew up in the LDS faith.
Yep.
And so when was it determined for you that you were going to go on a mission, or did you have some experience that led you to serving a mission?
I had kind of been thinking about it, but wasn't really all the way in there. My dad was actually a convert to the church. And so church was, I mean, I did everything at church, you know, with all those stuff with the young men and stuff. And I thought about, you know, maybe I'll go on a mission. Then I started having some friends talking about it. But the thing that really changed everything for me was when my brother went. Because he calls it his pre-Christian era. He had this pre-Christian era where I'm like going, that guy is something else. And he went on a mission and it literally transformed him.
Really?
When he walked back, he came home, I'm like, what have you done with my brother? I mean, he was a totally different person. And so that was pretty incredible to me. And I thought that I want that in my life. I want to be a better person. So I decided to go. I put my papers in. I get called to Belgium and France. I didn't even know where Belgium was.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you.
I'm not sure I know where it is now today.
Yeah, I have no idea. And I had to speak French. I could barely speak English. I mean, growing up in Southern Nevada, I'm just telling you. Other languages were not on the top of my list. And English was barely on the top of my list. And so I got to go to France and Belgium, and literally I had one of those experiences that just transformed me.
Are you talking about an experience in totality, or are you talking about there was certain time, place, something that was okay?
Just everything.
The whole experience.
The whole experience. You get to grow up. You get to learn how to serve other people. You get to forget about yourself. You learn more about God. All those things come to you. It was one of the most, even to this day, probably the most transformative experience in a compressed amount of time that I've ever had.
Do you lean on that experience
all the time?
Even to,
I think about it a lot because of the things I learned there and how it continues to. I just think about missionary service is one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life, especially in a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
And you're out there just grinding 24/7 for 2 years. I mean, and you're away from your family. And I've been away from my family a little bit, going to school and stuff. But when you're over there, and literally at the time, there was no email. So you're writing letters. You'd write a letter, and 9-10 days later, you might get one back. And they're crossing paths, and what you're asking there, it's just totally a nightmare.
Yeah.
And if they send you a package, maybe it would get there.
This is on Wells Fargo, right? The stagecoach.
Yeah. And it was coming across the ocean somehow. But it was just an amazing experience. And what was cool in France and Belgium, Americans were a novelty. You'd knock on a door and tell them you're an American. They're like, "You're an American?"
Really?
And they would invite you right in.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
How has that changed? Because now I think that French people just don't like Americans.
Well, there's the people that, there's some challenging people that come from America, right?
Yeah.
That are tourists. But you get away from kind of the big tourist places.
Yeah.
I think it's still a little bit of a kind of interesting thing.
Interesting.
Yep.
So I think about that regularly. And how that experience affects lives.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it seems like finding yourself in the service of others, like you said, forgetting about yourself is a significant part of the transformation that occurs on a mission.
Couldn't agree more. And you think about today and how self-absorbed people, especially young people, they get focused on themselves and worrying about what other people think. And if you can get out of that and just leave that behind for a while, I think it just does great things for a person's soul.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think in my own life, when I find myself in that situation, and I mean, I know that's a huge weakness, is not being selfless, being selfish. When I find myself more on the selfless side, things just seem to be better.
Yeah.
Life just seems to be better.
And I found that in business too. The more you can face outward to employees and partners and customers and stuff, there's just more joy in that, right? Yeah. There's nothing better than changing the life of an employee or even changing the life of a partner. I'll never forget one time, we were at a trade show one time, and Novell stock was just a rocket at the time. It was doubling, splitting, doubling. And I'll never forget, I was with Ray Norda, and some guy walks up to us. We were hopping out of a car to go to a meeting. This guy walks up and he goes, Mr. Norda, you changed my life. He's like going, do you work for us? He goes, no, I just bought your stock. He says, I've paid for all my kids' college because I bought Novell stock. Wow. And he says, thank you so much. And we walked away, and Ray goes, that was pretty cool.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
that's
you
not
think
bad.
about this random guy walks up, and because he had done something, he had bought a company's stock that Ray is helping to drive the value on. He saw that as Ray, and that was a huge deal for Ray.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that, because you're getting into something that I think is really important. We talked about a little bit about your business life, and now you've incorporated more of what a life experience that you had, a faith-based life experience that you had, and incorporating that into a business setting. I think that's really important. And maybe we don't talk about that enough. I think we think of your business life and your personal or spiritual life as being separate. And I don't know that that is necessarily the case, or maybe not the case for you. And so I want to talk about that.
Okay.
I still want to go through your mission and how you got to this point. So you serve in Belgium, France for a couple of years.
Yep.
Is it 2 years at
2
that
years.
point? Okay.
Yep.
When my father-in-law served, it was like the long one.
3.
Yeah.
2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. And he was in Norway. Never, the sun never went down, I think. Or wait, the sun never came up. It's one of those things.
Both
of those are true.
Every twice a year.
Yeah. Yes. So did you walk out of that mission with a love of French pastry?
Love is to put it lightly.
Oh, I knew that we were bonded in some way.
There's 3 things about France that, actually there's 4. So frites, which are French fries, but they originated in Belgium. The French kind of make fun of the Belgians that they eat frites. But I'm telling you, I grew to love it. Hated mayonnaise back in the day. You put a glob of mayonnaise on frites, it's the best thing ever.
I know you still order mayonnaise with your fries.
That's what I do all the time. And people are like, what are you doing? Okay, pastries, pâtisserie in French. You go to these, you walk down every street and there's a shop. And you look in the window and you're like, oh my heavens. I remember the first day I walked by one of those and I'm like going, can we go in there? It looks amazing. And every chance you got, you just stop, and they were not that expensive either.
Yeah.
And then the bread is off the hook. You get a fresh baguette, which they make them every day.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have a fresh baguette and some cheese, like a camembert or a brie or something. And that was lunch. Those 4 things right there from a food standpoint.
That sounds amazing.
Nothing better.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Did you ever witness the Tour de France when you were there?
I actually saw the Paris-Roubaix.
Ooh.
Because I served in Roubaix, my first city.
Uh-huh.
And there were all the guys zipping by on these bikes. I'm like, what's happening? There's this famous race.
What's happening?
Remember, I come from Southern Nevada. Remember?
Here.
I'm just like, where are these guys running around on these bikes? And they're ripping through Roubaix. And I'm like, what is this? And they go, it's the Paris-Roubaix bike race. I'm like going, okay, so what? So this huge thing I got to witness firsthand, but didn't even know what it was.
Didn't recognize it.
Didn't even know.
Oh, man. That's hilarious.
That would be like going to the city where the Super Bowl is and going, why is everybody here?
What is all of this about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you finish your service. You discover bike racing and pastry. You come back to the States, and now you're enrolled at BYU.
BYU, right.
Okay. And you're like a student teacher, French student teacher.
That's correct.
And this is really important in your life, because into the classroom to sign up one day
walks my future wife.
And her name is Lucia.
Yeah.
The story goes like this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
Your class was full,
Mm-hmm.
but if you stayed in the class, you could sign up. You could admit potentially
A
few
students.
more people.
Yep.
So they lined up.
Mhm.
People lined up in front of your desk. But Lucia was deep.
Clear in the back.
She wasn't going to make the mark.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that you recognized something special, and the long arm of the law
Reached over all
and grabbed that card.
Signed it, handed it back, and everybody's like going, what just happened? Totally reached over like 3 rows of students and grabbed her card. Because I'd seen her walk in. I'm like, that is a cute woman right there. And that was it.
That's so great.
We got married a year later.
A year later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you went to your professor or somebody.
Well, it was the department chairman.
Okay.
And because I thought, if I'm a student teacher, I better make sure this is on the up and up to date someone in the class.
Yeah.
So I go in there and I said, hey, listen, there's this really cute girl in my class I'd like to date. Do you have a problem with that? So he's the French department chairman.
Mm-hmm.
And he just goes, well, isn't that what BYU's all about? And I'm like going, ooh la la, there we go. So we started dating. We got married a year later.
Ah, so great.
Great story.
And that obviously super meaningful in your life.
I can see in my mind's eye, that was in, that would have been 1982, I think. Or no, 83. 1983. I can see in my mind's eye my wife walking in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is there a business lesson there? Like, is there a lesson that we can teach people? Like, hey, sometimes you have to pick the right card and sign it.
Either the right card or you just got to do whatever it takes to win.
Oh,
right?
that's
you
great.
Just, if I don't do that, if I'm just like, oh, I got to play by the rules and this person was here first. No, I'm going. Yeah. I'm going over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ends justify the means.
That's right.
Yeah. For now, no doubt. Okay. So you're teaching French. You're on the path. You're going to be a teacher.
Yep.
And until you're not going to be a teacher anymore.
Yeah. Took me one day of substitute teaching at Provo High School of junior high class in French. Changed my life. I am never going to teach in my lifetime.
I was going to ask if it was some spiritual experience.
Yeah. It was just,
maybe you could call it.
It was just painful. I'm like going, I can't imagine I have to come here and do that. I take my hat off to teachers. That's a hard job. And you don't get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
So bless your souls. And
teachers, police officers. I mean, there's certain that just don't get what they deserve.
Yeah.
What they should.
And so you think about that. I'm going down that path.
Yeah.
And that changes the course of my life.
That changed the course of your life.
And then I'm trying to figure out, what do I do?
Okay. This is the story.
Great story.
This is the story.
Another one of these defining moments.
Yes.
Where there's kind of something more than me that changes my course. Because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I literally see a guy on BYU campus that served in my mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk up to him. I could take you literally within a foot of where I stood when I talked to him. Know right where I was. Just on the east side of the library and the BYU bookstore. I said, dude, what are you going to study? And he goes, well, I'm signed up for computer science. I go, really? And he goes, this is 1981. This is going back in before I met my wife. He goes, I hear this whole computer thing's going to be big. That's the year the IBM PC ships. The Apple II had been out for a couple of years before that.
Yeah.
So nothing's happening in this whole personal computing environment at all. There's no smartphones. There's really no personal computers. And he just says, I think it's going to be big. And so I signed up and there I go. That conversation right there changed my career and my life.
Yeah.
Think about one conversation with someone pivoted me from where I was going on a path where I didn't even know where it was going to take me.
Yeah.
But it's been life-changing.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
And At this point, when you have that conversation, is there any thought? Is there any validation? Is there something that says to you, this is your path? This is the right way?
No, it was a door that said enter here, and I opened it and it was totally pitch black. No clue what it was, where I was going,
Mm-hmm.
what I had to do. Computer science stuff is super hard, especially for a dumb guy like me.
Mm.
And it stretched me beyond my capacity, to be honest with you. It was very hard.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I even got through all of it. But the thing for me was, it literally was one of those things where you had to take about, not one step, but about 20 in the dark to get where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was just dumb, maybe, but there wasn't really anything. I didn't feel a really big push or a continued push, but as things I kept going, it just kind of, the light starts coming on and you're like going, okay, okay. I get a job at Novell. I do this company, I do another company, and everything just starts opening up and you're like going, wow, that was a fateful decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fateful.
In making that decision, was there anything about the way you were living your life, what you were doing in your life, the circumstances surrounding you that got you aligned? Like, it sounds so much like happenstance. Well, I saw a guy that I knew from this, and then he said, let's do computers, it's going to be a big deal. And then you do. Is there something more than that? Or was it just like...
I think a lot of times there's just some real... with business, if anybody tells you other than this, I just don't believe them. There is a component of luck and good fortune in every business that's ever been created. Talk to people. There's something that happens along the way that either catapults them forward or stops them dead in their tracks. But I looked at that as one of those things where, and no, I don't think it was just like, oh, this guy's an amazing guy and I need to help him get.
Sure.
I don't think it was any of that. In fact, it was probably the opposite of that. Like, maybe I got something because I really didn't even deserve it, but maybe I just need to be on a certain path. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where it comes and you recognize something there, and then you just start moving forward. I'm a big proponent of forward momentum in your life. And you always got to have forward momentum. If you don't, you're going to be dead.
I've heard you talk about this. And even if you don't have a distinct plan, or maybe even if you don't have a plan,
get up and get moving.
Yeah. I think it's such great advice.
Yeah. And I use an analogy about the parked car, right? You probably heard that.
Yep.
Is, can you turn the steering wheel when the car's parked? No. You turn the motor on? Yeah, but you're not going anywhere. But once you get forward momentum, just a slight turn of the wheel, you can change 5 lanes of traffic. And that's what forward momentum gives you in your life, is it gives you options, it gives you opportunities, but it's all about getting up and get going. There's so many people that are just paralyzed and they don't want to make one step forward unless they know everything that's coming. And you just won't.
Yeah.
You got to take a little bit of risk.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you do as an entrepreneur. You have to take risk.
Is there any way to mitigate the risk?
Yeah. I think you got to be calculated in it. And I'm not an entrepreneur. I hear these entrepreneurs that, they mortgage their house and they rent up 40 credit cards and then they hit it big. I would tell you there's probably 40 other guys that lost everything. Yeah. And so I'm not a proponent of saying risk everything you have and be stupid. I think you have to be calculated and you have to go forward with great kind of faith that, hey, I can do this. And you just be calculated about it. Figure it out, and don't put yourself in a position to lose everything. I'm not a proponent of that. Some people are. I'm not.
When you are faced with a big decision or what we might consider a risky decision in your life, do you have a process? How do you manage that, making that decision?
And I kind of have gone through that process, and I've made some mistakes even when I've gone through that process. because there's some things that are a little bit out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's around capital and where you invest in things, I've got a process I work through. I think about the market, I think about the technology, and most importantly, I think about the people, because you're really investing in the people. That's one thing Ray Norda taught me. I asked him one day, I said, how did you determine what businesses you put money in? He goes, team is number one. He says, the business itself will morph 20 times before you hit the right one. He says, if you don't have the right guy on the horse, you'll never get to number 20. They'll die at number one. And so you have to have really good people that can pivot and change and move forward, not maybe knowing where they're going, but they're really good at pivoting. Yeah. And I think that's really critical.
Unbelievably critical.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In your, okay, so you're now getting through BYU, you're going to jump into computers.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, are you, in your personal life, how meaningful is your faith to you?
It's everything. That's just everything. It's an undergirding or underpinning to everything I do. And business is hard sometimes, and sometimes interactions with people are hard. And I think it helps you be a little more kind and a little more understanding, but there's hard decisions you have to make around people in business. And that's the hardest part, because you never want to put anybody in a bad spot with their family or anything else. And I've been in situations where you had to let people go and everything else. One thing that gives me comfort is I've talked to those guys afterwards and they go, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I've landed on my feet. I'm actually in a better situation than when I was working for you. Yeah. And that always helps me feel better about that.
Sure. Because you don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a situation where you have to do that. But guess what? That's business.
Yeah.
And you have to separate not your faith from your business, but when there's difficult things you do the best, because you may have investors and you've got to do the best thing for all of the shareholders in your business. That's what drives you. Mm-hmm. Is I, as a CEO of a company, I have to do the best for every shareholder, not necessarily every employee, not every customer, but my shareholders. They're the guys that pay me. And so I have to make sure I'm taking care of my shareholders. And Ray Norda had a thing. I love this. This was his 3 things. And he says, this used to drive my investors crazy. Customers first, employees second, shareholders third. He said, that used to drive people crazy. And he says, listen, I take care of those other 2, you'll be happy. But even Ray, I know he had to deal with hard employee stuff.
Yeah.
Times when you have to take chunks out of the business to kind of keep the whole business moving forward.
Yeah.
He always adjusted.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to adjust your business to the circumstances mm-hmm. of what's going on in the industry and stuff, you're not going to survive.
So if I'm trying to, if I'm looking at your business life and your personal life, by the way, at any moment, I know you have church callings mm-hmm. throughout all of this.
Yep.
At any point along this line, are you thinking, I'm going to serve at some significant level in the church, or I want to serve at some
Never.
significant level?
Never. People ask me, how do those calls come out? You pick up the phone. Phone rings, you pick it up, and on the other end says, they ask you to come and meet with someone at church headquarters, and that's how the calling comes to you. That's it. You don't have buttons or signs or anything like that. It's just literally a calling comes to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know why some of them have come to me, to be quite honest with you. I'm the least of these.
Well, that's why the callings have come.
Maybe. But I look at it as a great opportunity to serve other people. And it's been a great blessing in my life to serve in some of the capacities I've had. They're challenging, especially when you're trying to run a business and you've got something that takes a lot of extra time. But it's been a good part of my experience, I would say.
Would you have been as successful in your life without the faith and life principles that you live?
That's hard to say. There's a lot of great people that don't have a faith
No
base,
question.
and they do really well.
For sure.
So I don't know. It's helped me personally for sure. There's some underpinnings and some things I've learned from that, but also just being around great people. Every company I work with, I learned something from the employees and the leaders of those companies. And that's I would say one of the greatest blessings of my life is I get to work, especially in my current capacity, I get to work with some of the greatest people on the planet. It literally is. There's times I tell my wife, I go, I don't know what I've done to be so lucky to be around so many good people. And that's what people keep asking me, so why do you keep doing this? You're 64 years old, you probably ought to retire. And I could, but I don't like to. I like the game of business. Most importantly, I love to meet great people. It's just the spice of life.
Yeah. We touched on this earlier. What is the right balance between life principles and business principles? And maybe balance isn't the word, but there's got to be crossover. There has to be life principles that you can utilize in your business or should utilize in your business. I think you talked about one of them. People first.
Yeah.
Is a life principle. What are other things? What are other life principles that you utilize in the business setting?
I think the whole thing of integrity is probably the top thing. When you think about being honest in everything you do, that is a great quality to have as a leader in anything, but business. Because a lot of times you're dealing with someone else's money. You're dealing with someone else's livelihood. You're dealing with partners that are counting on you to do stuff. One of the greatest compliments I ever had, we were working with Hewlett Packard. Mm-hmm. And I was actually going to, I was leaving a business to go do a church calling. And I went down one last time to thank them for all that they had helped us with in our business, because it literally had made us a lot of money and our stock value because of our relationship with HP. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget the guy that we worked with down there. He pulled me aside. He said, Jan, can I just tell you something? I said, sure. And he goes, I have to tell you, I don't know that I've ever worked with a company that has done everything they said they would do. And I was like going, thank you. That meant a lot to me personally, that he looked at us as this little company in Utah and said, I could always count on you to do what you said you would do. He said, without fault. Every time you said you'd do something, you would do it. That, man, I walked out of that meeting going, whoa, that was a big deal.
Yeah, if you could build a business like that, I mean, you'd have the tiger by the tail.
And sometimes in business, you look for opportunities to maybe get the upper hand or here and there.
Sure. It's very tempting.
It is. And I think the best partnerships and the best relationships are when both come away from feeling like that was the best deal they've ever done. If anybody ever feels like they kind of got taken advantage of, you're probably not going to work with those guys very long.
No.
So I think one of the things I've learned, and one of the ways we grew our business probably as fast as we did, we went from 0 to $350 million in 7 years. And it was because of our partners. They're the ones that really helped us grow. And we always did things that would help them grow their business. It wasn't always about us. Mm-hmm. And once we figured that part out, I'll never forget, Greg Butterfield and I met with Michael Dell. They were big partners as well. And we used to tell him that, hey, you guys sold $60 million worth of our software, and that was the money that went to them. He goes, I don't really care about that. We're like going, that's a lot of money. He goes, I have a $10 billion hardware company, and my objective is to sell hardware. And if you can't help me sell hardware, you're really of no use to me. So we went back and said, message received. So we came back to him the next time and said, let us show you how much hardware how many hardware sales, or the amount of hardware sales that we influenced by selling our software. It was $2.5 billion. We had his attention at that point. But it just changed the way he thought about us, because it was about what his business was and not about our business. So when you think about a partner and you try to understand what their economic engine is,
Mm-hmm.
Dell was selling hardware, period, end of story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could help them be better at that, you were going to be a great partner. But if you went and said, I want you to sell more software, you're not aligned with them.
No. And they don't have there's not the same use
Right.
for them. They'll find the right partner.
They'll find somebody that's willing to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're trying to find a way to partner with someone, find out what they're trying to do and then help them be better in their business. If you do that, you'll be on a rocket with
This
them.
feels a lot like kind of the service-based economy.
Yeah. I think that's a great connection. I never thought about that. But you're not worried so much about yourself. You're worried about your partner. And if you can do that, it just comes back in spades, is what I found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your current role, by the way, you know, our time's almost up already. It flies by. Well, it flew by for me. This may have been painful.
No,
for
it's
you.
been great. It's literally, I can't believe it's been that long.
So we might have to do
version 2.
In French, we say part deux.
Part deux. Mm-hmm.
See that?
That was very good.
That's
French.
pretty good.
That was a good accent too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned that from the Pink Panther.
Well, you told me another Pink Panther quote before the show, and I laughed because it's one of my favorite quotes of all time.
It's the best.
Does your dog bite?
No, my dog does not bite.
One of my favorites.
It's the best. Okay. I'm just going to ask you a few last questions and we'll wrap it up. And then maybe we'll think about doing a second.
I'm around.
A second part. In your current capacity, like you serving as an advisor to eHub, you're typically employed as an advisor currently. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Fair? When you look at a business and analyze what is happening outside of the numbers, and obviously the numbers are meaningful, what are the key factors that help you determine whether or not a business is going down the right path or what might need to change? Are there things that you can identify?
Yeah. Like Ray said, it's the people first.
Mm-hmm.
So when I come to a company, I get a feel for the people. That's number one. What does the CEO look like in the business? What is that person's personality, and is it pervasive in the company? And is the CEO when they look at their company, do they have a scarcity mentality where it's just, I got to hold on to everything I have? Or do they have an abundance mentality? That's one thing I watch for very quickly. And then I look at the culture of the business. I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but recently someone said, culture eats strategy for business, or for lunch.
Yeah. It's a great
and
quote.
And when you watch it firsthand in a company, man, it is true. Because what happens then is your employees are just fully aligned with what you're trying to do as a business. They're all in. They don't want to work anywhere else. They love what they do, and they can't wait to get back here and get going again. If you get that in my mind, that's the secret sauce. Yeah. And you think about it, it's like, is that hard? It's hard. It's super hard for some people.
Yeah, it can be hard.
Yeah.
You're dealing with lots of different personalities.
And I work with a lot of different companies. And interestingly enough, there are not many that figure that out.
Wow.
Which is shocking to me.
Yeah.
It seems pretty straightforward.
It does.
But it takes a lot of work, and it comes from the top down.
Yeah. You know, I do these little things for eHub called the eHub in 5. In fact, you need to participate in one. And we just do a little 5-minute interview, a 5-minute podcast with every employee in the company. And I always ask the question, what is your favorite thing about eHub?
Yeah.
And I think conservatively, 98% of the time, the answer is, I love the people.
Yeah.
That's from the employees.
Yeah.
The other 3% of the time, they say they love working with me specifically.
The other 2% of the time?
97 plus 3.
30%.
Yeah. So then I'm a significant portion of why people like to. I'm guessing I'm a significant reason why you like to be around.
No question.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to cut it here. Like, I know that our schedules, everybody's busy.
Everybody's busy, and nobody actually wants to listen to one person for a long period of time.
That's not true.
That is true.
People are going to say, when is part 2 coming out? That's what they're going to say after they listen to this.
And I'll make sure I turn all my devices off.
And I'm going to finish this with one story.
Okay.
That I think is meaningful. I've known you for 5 years, 6 years, several years.
Yeah, several years, probably 4.
Okay. And everything that you've said and your life story, all of that resonates. And I can say without hesitation that relationships matter to you.
Very much.
People matter to you.
Mm-hmm. That
you are a man of faith and that you don't separate your faith life and your business life. Like there is intricate combination between those two things. You live your faith in your business and your business in your faith. Like you can't separate the two. I think that's commendable is the word.
Say. I just don't think there's room for duplicity.
Yeah.
And we all have our weaknesses and challenges and stuff. But I think when it comes to integrity and kindness and those kinds of things and relationships, you just can't be one person over here and a different person over here.
Yeah.
It's who you are.
Yeah.
And that's what culture is built on, is what people are.
Yes. There's no question. And I will finish with this. All of that is true unless you get Jan Newman on the golf course. And then we have internally a nickname for Jan. And you know what it is. It's not Cordo.
I don't know what it is.
It's Mean Jan.
Mean Jan.
It's Mean Jan. Because the competitive...
It's a kind Mean Jan. It's a fun Mean Jan. Let's be honest.
Competitive spirit on the golf course comes out. And all of a sudden, when I'm standing over a 2-foot putt, Mean Jan is in my ear. There's a few dollars on the line.
I remember this. Frank coins this. He goes, that was Mean Jan. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, you just let me have it when I'm over this putt. And there was maybe a couple of bucks on the line. I'm like, well, okay. That's funny. I totally forgot about that. Mean Jan. Okay.
So let's leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that.
We'll dig into Mean Jan.
That will bring up a lot of, I'll be getting some phone calls. For
sure. Well, I hope so.
Yep. Yeah. Frank's been great.
Jan, I can't tell you, I had high hopes for this. It exceeded all of my expectations. You're even like, I always feel like I need to work harder in a good way when I spend time with you. I feel like that now. Like you lead a life that's an example to others. I hope others say that about me someday. So
they do.
I hope you know how much I appreciate you being here.
Frank.
Thank you.
That was very kind of you. And thanks for the invitation to be here. I know you have a lot of great people that you could choose to come here. I'm just honored that I'd be part of it. So thank you.
Well, you're the best. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.